I never thought I'd be the type of guy to have my whole world turned upside down by something like infidelity. But here I am, laying it all out for you. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Lisa for 7 years. We had what I thought was a pretty solid marriage. Both of us were in our mid-30s, living in a cozy suburb outside of Chicago with a dog named Max and a well-kept garden. We shared friends, vacations, and a life that seemed, at least on the surface, idyllic. But things began to shift around 6 months ago. It started with the small things. Lisa was more absorbed in her phone, spending late nights at work, and her affection towards me waned. I brushed it off initially. Everyone has busy periods or phases when they get lost in their work, right? But the nagging feeling in my gut grew. I started to notice how she would often come home late and seem distracted, like she was carrying around a secret that didn't include me. Then the behavior escalated. She began to dress differently, more provocatively for work, which was odd considering she was always a jeans and t-shirt kind of girl at home. I remember one evening she walked in wearing that red dress, gorgeous on her but far too flashy for the mundane office setting. I sarcastically mentioned she seemed ready for a date and she shot back with a laugh. Yeah, right, just trying to spice up the office vibe. Looking back, that was my first sign, a warning bell that I should have heeded. Still, I continued to brush it aside. I convinced myself that I was being paranoid or jealous. I mean, what kind of husband assumes his wife is cheating? It felt wrong. But when I overheard her on the phone one night, whispering and giggling in a way that made me feel like an intruder in my own home, that was the moment the dam broke. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I was already awake and her voice floated down the hallway, flirty and intimate. I could hear "babe" and "I can't wait to see you." My stomach dropped. It felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. I couldn't breathe and my heart raced. Who the hell was she talking to? I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion, and heartache all rolled into one. I decided to confront her that weekend after I had collected myself. I needed proof, so I started gathering bits of evidence, text messages, late-night phone calls, and a few random things outside her normal behavior. As I pieced it together, it became clearer that this wasn't an innocent flirtation. It was real, and it was with a coworker of hers, Mark. A guy I had met a couple of times, always thinking he was just another face in the crowd. The confrontation was like a scene from a bad movie. I laid it all out on the dining table, the evidence stacked like a case against her. I could see the color drain from her face as I rattled off the clues that had led me to uncover her lies. "Lisa, you're cheating on me, aren't you?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. Her reaction was a cocktail of denial and outrage. "How dare you accuse me of that? You're being ridiculous, Jake," she yelled. The more I pushed, the more she tried to turn it around on me, claiming I was paranoid and insecure. It was infuriating to watch her avoid accountability, spinning her web of lies as if they were truth. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand she admit it, but instead I just felt hollow. As the days passed, I shut down emotionally. I lost interest in everything, my work, my friends, even Max. I felt like I had been blindsided by a hurricane, and I was left trying to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. I went through cycles of anger and despair. I'd sit in silence, replaying every moment of our marriage, every time I felt I had done something to push her away, questioning if I could have somehow stopped this. But as the shock wore off, I realized that I was tired of feeling helpless. I thought about Mark and how he had dared to step into my life, the life I had built with Lisa. I decided that I wouldn't just sit around and sulk. I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my dignity and hit back at the betrayal I had endured. I didn't know what that would look like just yet, but I was determined to find out. And that's how I began to plot my revenge. I wanted Lisa to face the consequences of her actions, which included losing her job and her reputation. It felt like the only way to bring balance back into my life, to make her understand the gravity of what she had done. After the explosive confrontation, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The anger was still simmering beneath the surface, but now it was channeled into something productive: revenge. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I could make Lisa feel the pain she had inflicted on me. It wasn't just the betrayal I was hurt by. It was the way she had dismissed my feelings and turned her back on the life we had built together. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my plan needed to be carefully crafted, not just a rash act of vengeance. I had always been the type of person who believed in karma, but at that moment, I felt like karma needed a little push. My wife had decided to risk everything for a fling with Mark, and I was determined to make her pay the price. So, the first step in my plan was to gather all the concrete evidence I could find about her affair. I wanted to make it irrefutable. I started by checking her phone. I knew it was a breach of trust, but at this point, we were no longer on the same side. One night, after she had fallen asleep, I tiptoed into the living room with her phone in hand. I had seen her unlock it with her fingerprint numerous times, and thankfully it worked for me as well. Scrolling through her messages, I felt a sickness in my stomach as I found the conversations with Mark, flirty texts, explicit messages, and plans that left no doubt about what was going on. I felt like a voyeur, but I pushed through. I took screenshots of everything that felt important. I knew I'd need to have my proof well organized when it came time to confront her about her work life as well. Then came the next step. I needed to delve into the details of Mark's role at their company. I was lucky to have a friend, Alex, who worked in HR at the same firm they both were employed at. I called him, and under the guise of simply catching up, asked about Mark. I mentioned that I had heard he was making a name for himself and was curious about how he was doing. Alex, as friends do, was more than willing to share. As it turned out, Mark had a few skeletons in his closet, previous incidents that could potentially tarnish his reputation at the company. It was exactly the kind of information I needed, and it gave me a sense of empowerment. I could use this to my advantage, but I had to tread carefully. I didn't want to raise any suspicions about my intentions. During the following weeks, I kept my distance from Lisa while still remaining in the house, making sure to act as if everything was normal. I would greet her when she came home, ask about her day, and even share a few laughs over dinner. I was playing the long game, biding my time while I strategized my next moves. It felt surreal to act as if I was still her loving husband while plotting the downfall of her secret life with Mark. The emotional turmoil was exhausting, but I couldn't allow myself to get distracted. I focused on every detail, creating a plan that would expose Lisa and Mark without leaving a trace of my involvement. I set my intentions on documenting everything carefully and began collecting more information about their interactions at work. I knew my goal was to ensure that Lisa faced consequences, and that meant relying on the evidence I had gathered. It was during this time that I came up with the idea to anonymously leak information to the HR department regarding their affair. It seemed perfect. No one would suspect me, and I could remain in the shadows while Lisa's world crumbled. I understood the risks involved. I was playing with people's lives, but the thought of her being exposed for what she had done fueled my determination. With Alex's help, I gathered additional intel. I learned more about the office culture and the policies regarding workplace relationships. The company had a strict policy against such affairs, especially because they had a past scandal involving a similar situation that had resulted in both parties losing their jobs. I noted this down carefully. I now had a solid plan to discredit both Lisa and Mark. As I prepared to set my plan into motion, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and guilt. Part of me still loved Lisa, despite everything. I wanted to scream at her to let her know how much she had hurt me, but deep down I knew that this was my way of reclaiming power. The day finally came when I was ready to anonymously send a detailed email to HR. I crafted it carefully, ensuring it was articulate and filled with all the necessary evidence, including dates, times, and some of the explicit messages I had found. I made sure to write it as if I were a concerned employee, worried about the integrity of the workplace. With my finger hovering over the send button, I took a deep breath. I thought about how this would change everything for her. There was no turning back. I pressed send, and in that moment I felt a wave of exhilaration wash over me. I was ready to watch the chaos unfold. The aftermath of sending that email was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. I had anticipated a lot of things, but the immediate sense of relief was quickly overshadowed by an overwhelming anxiety. I had just set a machine in motion that could irrevocably alter my life and Lisa's. In those first few days, I was walking on a tightrope, trying to maintain my composure at home while the storm I had unleashed began to brew. Lisa seemed completely oblivious to what was coming. She continued her routine, leaving for work early and coming home late. The separation we had built between us was dehumanizing. It was as if we were two strangers sharing a house. I would sit in the living room pretending to watch TV while my mind raced with thoughts of what would happen once HR caught wind of the situation. Then the day came when the fallout began. I was at home, pretending to work on my laptop when I received a text from Alex. "You won't believe what just happened. HR called an emergency meeting. They're investigating something serious." My heart raced. I knew Lisa and Mark were in the crosshairs, but hearing it from Alex made it real. A wave of exhilaration crashed over me, but it was quickly followed by a sense of dread. I had hoped to sit on the sidelines, but I was now acutely aware that I was about to be dragged into the chaos. What if Lisa confronted me about it? Would she figure it out that I had orchestrated this? I tried to push the worries aside. It was too late to back out now, and I was committed to my course of action. Later that night, I came home to find Lisa seated at the dining table, her usual confident demeanor replaced by a look of confusion and fear. "Jake, have you heard anything about Mark? There's been a situation at work," she said, her voice shaky. In that moment, I had to play my part well. I feigned ignorance, shrugging my shoulders. "No, not really. What's going on?" She hesitated, looking like she was searching for an escape from the conversation. "I don't know, something about an investigation. They called Mark into HR, and now I'm worried." Her eyes darted nervously, and I could see the cracks beginning to show. It was a small victory, but it felt good to see her so unsettled. As the days wore on, the investigation became the topic of hushed conversations around the office. I would hear snippets from Lisa as she tried to piece together the chaos that was unfolding at her workplace. "I overheard that someone reported Mark and me to HR," she said one evening, her tone edged with panic. "It's ridiculous. I can't believe someone would do that." I had to stifle a smirk. She was completely oblivious to the fact that the person she was blaming could very well be me. It was almost too easy. I watched her frantically reach out to her coworkers, trying to gauge who the snitch was, but she never suspected me. The deeper the investigation went, the more frantic she became. I could see the weight of guilt and fear settling heavily upon her shoulders. Gradually, I became aware of the repercussions of my actions. Lisa's anxiety turned into sleepless nights, and her once vibrant personality dimmed. There were moments when she would collapse on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, and I could tell she was spiraling. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I had wanted this. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, but seeing her like this tugged at some remnants of the love I once had for her. After a week, the hammer finally dropped. Lisa came home looking pale and worn out. I knew that the investigation had reached its climax. "Jake, they found out everything," she said, her voice trembling. "Mark and I are being put on administrative leave while they sort this out." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment I felt a sense of satisfaction. She was finally receiving her comeuppance. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, keeping my tone steady. Inside, however, I was bubbling with glee. Lisa took a deep breath, plucking up the courage to face the inevitable. "We need to talk. This is serious. I don't want to lose my job, Jake. This could ruin everything." And there it was, the desperation in her voice. It stirred something inside me. I could have easily reminded her that the path she chose led us to this moment, but I opted for silence. I wanted her to feel the weight of her decisions without my interference. As the days turned into weeks, the fallout continued. Lisa was increasingly withdrawn, and Mark was nowhere to be found. I learned through Alex that Mark had been dismissed from his position, and rumors were flying about his professional misconduct. The whispers had turned into a full-blown scandal, leaving Lisa isolated in her own guilt. One night, as we sat in the darkness of our living room, she turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Jake, I need to know if there's any way we can salvage this. I made a terrible mistake and I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked, and for a moment I could see the vulnerable woman I once loved. But my resolve had hardened. I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. "You had your chance, Lisa. This is the consequence of your choices. You decided to destroy us for a fling," I said, my voice steady but devoid of emotion. Her face fell, and I could see the realization wash over her that she was losing everything: her job, her reputation, and her marriage. It felt surreal to witness her unraveling, knowing I had orchestrated it all. But as I watched the light fade from her eyes, I couldn't help but wonder if I was becoming the villain in my own story. The weight of the situation settled heavily on my chest, and although I had set out to ruin Lisa's life, I found myself grappling with an unexpected sense of moral conflict. Watching her break down was not as satisfying as I had imagined. I had wanted her to face the consequences of her betrayal, but I didn't anticipate how deeply it would affect me. I felt like I was drowning in my own need for revenge, and it was beginning to suffocate me. Days turned into weeks, and Lisa became a shadow of her former self. She spent hours staring blankly at the television, barely eating or sleeping. The vibrant woman I had married, the one who used to fill our home with laughter, was now a mere echo of her former self. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? But what had I become in the process? One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I came across photos from happier times, our wedding, vacations, and moments that had once felt special. I couldn't help but find myself reminiscing about the love we had shared, the dreams we had built together. It was all so distant now, overshadowed by the deceit that had crept into our lives. I realized that I was also losing a part of myself in this vendetta. Then, one night after another of Lisa's tearful apologies, I felt a surge of anger and confusion. "You think apologies will fix this? You destroyed my trust, Lisa. You threw it away for a moment of pleasure," I shouted, my voice trembling with pent-up frustration. She flinched, but I could see the stubborn resolve in her eyes. "You don't understand. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Mark made me feel wanted and I got caught up in it. It was a mistake, Jake." Her words only stoked the fire of my anger. "A mistake? You call this a mistake? You destroyed everything we built." I felt the walls closing in, and suddenly it all felt too real. The anger I had cultivated for weeks began to morph into something more akin to sorrow. That night, after Lisa had retreated to our bedroom, I sat alone in the living room, grappling with my emotions. I realized I had crossed a line, one that had blurred the lines of who I was as a husband and a person. I had set out to ruin her, but in doing so, I was losing sight of myself. In the days that followed, I watched Lisa navigate a hell of her own making. Her shame was palpable. She lost weight and looked increasingly disheveled. I realized she hadn't just lost her job, but also her friends, her reputation, and, in a way, she was losing herself. I could see the toll it was taking on her, and it stirred something deep within me. One afternoon, I found myself at the local coffee shop, trying to clear my mind. As I sat there sipping my coffee, I overheard a couple discussing infidelity. "It's not just the act itself, it's what it does to the relationship," one woman said. "It breaks trust and changes everything." Her words struck a chord, echoing in my mind as I thought about the path I had chosen. By the time I returned home, I realized that I didn't want to be the person who sought revenge at the cost of my own humanity. I had entered a dangerous cycle, and while Lisa had made a grave mistake, I was not without fault either. I had allowed my pain to morph into something dark, and it was consuming me. That evening, Lisa approached me, her demeanor different. She had stopped crying, but the anguish in her expression remained. "I know I messed up, and I'll never forgive myself for what I did," she said softly. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now, but I want to be honest with you. Mark was a mistake, but I was unhappy before that. I didn't realize it until it was too late." I stood there wrestling with the impulse to simply dismiss her words, but something in her voice made me pause. "What do you mean unhappy?" I asked, my voice steady but curious. "I felt neglected," she admitted. "We used to talk about everything, but it felt like we were drifting. I thought I could fix it by seeking attention elsewhere, but it only made things worse. I was wrong and I'm so sorry." Her honesty caught me off guard. I had expected more denial, more excuses. Instead, I saw a woman who had hit rock bottom and was desperate to dig her way back up. "You need to understand that the damage is done, Lisa. You shattered my trust." "I know," she replied, tears pooling in her eyes, "but I want to rebuild it. I want to fix this if you'll let me." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to scream and tell her that it was too late, that the damage was irreparable. But there was another part of me, the part that remembered the love we once shared, that felt the tiniest flicker of hope. For the first time in weeks, I found myself at a crossroads. I could continue down the path of vengeance, or I could choose to face the pain together and find a way to heal. As much as it pained me to admit it, I wanted to believe in forgiveness, even if it felt like a distant dream. "Maybe we can try to work through this, but it's going to take time and you have to be willing to do the work," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lisa nodded, her face lighting up with a mix of relief and determination. "I will, Jake, I promise." And just like that, we were navigating uncharted waters. We were both broken, but there was a flicker of possibility. I didn't know what the future held, but I was willing to find out, even if it meant facing my own demons along the way. As the days turned into weeks, Lisa and I began to navigate the rocky terrain of our relationship with a renewed sense of determination. It was an uphill battle, one filled with awkward conversations, honest reflections, and painful realizations. I had chosen to forgive her, but that didn't mean the scars of betrayal had vanished overnight. In many ways, they were still fresh, throbbing reminders of the hurt and disappointment I had experienced. We decided to seek couples counseling. It was a necessary step, one I had resisted initially because I feared it would simply be another avenue for Lisa to dodge accountability. But I realized that if we were going to rebuild our marriage, we needed a neutral ground to process our feelings and address our issues. The therapist we saw, Dr. Fields, had a warm demeanor and an uncanny ability to help us peel back the layers of our relationship. In our first session, Lisa broke down as she recounted the events leading up to her affair. "I felt so disconnected from you," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought that by seeking validation from someone else it would fill the emptiness, but it only made things worse." I listened intently, my heart heavy with a mixture of sympathy and resentment. I had felt the distance, too, but I had never imagined it would lead us to such a catastrophic point. "I wish you had talked to me, Lisa. We could have worked through our issues together," I replied, my tone more reflective than accusatory. Dr. Fields nodded, guiding the conversation. "Communication is key in any relationship, especially when facing challenges. You both have to be willing to express your needs and feelings openly." That became our mantra in the sessions that followed. We learned to articulate our emotions without the fear of judgment or retaliation. It wasn't easy. There were times when we faced raw truths that made us both uncomfortable. I had to confront my own shortcomings, my tendency to bury myself in work and neglect the emotional intimacy in our relationship. As much as I wanted to focus solely on Lisa's betrayal, I began to realize that I, too, had played a role in our disconnection. While her actions had been a betrayal of trust, my inattention had contributed to the environment in which she felt the need to seek solace in another man. We also took time to reflect on the happier moments we had shared, allowing ourselves to reminisce about the love that had initially drawn us together. It felt therapeutic to recall the laughter, the adventures, and the dreams we had woven into our lives. Sometimes we would even laugh about the silly quirks we had learned to love in each other. But the journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were days when the anger bubbled to the surface, and I felt the urge to lash out. One evening, after a particularly heated discussion about her affair, I snapped. "You know, you lost your job because of your choices, and I can't just forget that. You took everything from me." Lisa's face fell, and even though I felt justified in my anger, I could see the pain it caused her. "I know, I'm trying to make this right," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you." In those moments of conflict, Dr. Fields would remind us that healing wouldn't happen linearly. Forgiveness is a process, and it's okay to have moments of anger or frustration. Just remember to communicate how you feel without hurting each other, she advised. Gradually, we began to find a rhythm. Lisa started looking for a new job, determined to rebuild her career and get back on her feet. I admired her resilience, even as I tried to navigate my own feelings of distrust. I wanted to support her, but there was always that nagging voice in the back of my mind, reminding me of how easily everything had crumbled before. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, there was a small moment of stillness between us. I caught her gaze, and there was a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Jake, I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work," she said softly. "I know I messed up in a huge way, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to regain your trust." I could feel the sincerity in her words, and for the first time in a long while I felt a glimmer of hope. "I want that too, Lisa. I want us to find a way back, but it's going to take time, and I need you to understand that," I replied, my voice steady but cautious. As the weeks rolled on, we started to rebuild our lives together. Lisa found a new job at a local marketing firm, and while it was a step down from her previous position, it felt like a fresh start for both of us. I could see the spark returning in her eyes, and it made me hopeful for what lay ahead. Then came the day when Lisa sat me down at the dining table, her expression serious. "I wanted to tell you something, Jake," she said, her voice steady. "I've realized through this process that I need to take responsibility for my actions. I can't just brush it under the rug and hope it goes away. I'm going to reach out to Mark and let him know I want nothing to do with him anymore." I felt a lump in my throat. It was a bold move, and while part of me was anxious about the repercussions, I knew it was necessary for her healing and for our marriage. "Are you sure that's what you want?" I asked, my heart racing. "Yes, I need to close that chapter in my life for good," she replied, determination radiating from her. In that moment, I realized that Lisa was not only fighting to regain my trust, but she was also fighting for herself. I felt proud of her. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Then go for it. I'll support you." And just like that, we found ourselves on the other side of betrayal, cautiously optimistic about what the future might hold. We still had a long way to go, but we were learning to navigate the complexities of love, trust, and forgiveness together. The days turned into months, and while the road ahead was still filled with bumps and detours, I began to feel a renewed sense of hope for our marriage. Lisa followed through on her commitment to sever ties with Mark, and while the process was difficult, it served as a pivotal moment in both of our healing journeys. I was proud of her for taking responsibility and setting boundaries. It demonstrated to me that she was serious about our future together. The day she reached out to Mark, she came home visibly shaken yet resolute. "I told him that it was over," she said, her eyes wide with a mix of relief and anxiety. "I felt so sick doing it, but I knew it was necessary." I could see the weight lifting off her shoulders. "I'm glad you did that," I said, pulling her into an embrace. "It's a step forward for both of us." As we held each other, I felt a flicker of the connection we once had, that electric spark of intimacy that had dimmed for so long. It was fragile but present, a sign that we were finally mending the rift between us. We continued our therapy sessions with Dr. Fields, who provided us with tools to communicate more effectively, encouraging us to express our feelings without running from the discomfort. There were still tough days, but with every session, I felt like we were building a stronger foundation. One night, after a particularly long day at work, I sat down with Lisa and we decided to revisit some of our favorite memories together. We flipped through old photo albums, laughing at our younger selves and the naivety that once defined our relationship. It felt cathartic, like shedding old skin. "I can't believe we used to wear those outfits," Lisa said, chuckling at a picture of us on a beach vacation. "What were we thinking?" I laughed, remembering the carefree days before everything spiraled out of control. "Honestly, I think we were just having too much fun to care." It was in moments like these that I felt the walls we had built begin to crumble. Yes, the betrayal had left scars, but it had also provided us with an opportunity to grow stronger if we were willing to put in the effort. As the seasons changed, I noticed other changes within us too. Lisa started participating in community events, volunteering at local shelters, and even got involved in a book club. I admired her determination to redefine herself beyond the confines of our past. It inspired me to do the same. I dove into new projects at work, focusing on personal growth rather than allowing the shadows of betrayal to linger in my mind. One evening over dinner, Lisa looked at me with an intensity I hadn't seen in a long time. "Jake, I want to thank you for being patient with me. I know I don't deserve it after everything, but you've allowed me the space to heal. It means more than you can imagine." I nodded, taking in her words. "I appreciate that, but it goes both ways. I've had to confront my own flaws too. I wasn't perfect, and I think that's important for us to acknowledge if we want to move forward." As we sat there, I realized that we were no longer defined by the betrayal. We were two imperfect individuals working to build a new life together. We began to talk about plans for the future, traveling, starting a family, and finding ways to continue nurturing our bond. It wasn't all sunshine and roses. We still had our disagreements and moments where old insecurities would resurface. But what had changed was our willingness to confront those issues together. We learned to fight differently, focusing on resolution rather than blame. One day, as we were taking a walk in the park, Lisa squeezed my hand. "I think we're going to be okay, Jake," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. I could see the determination in her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "Yes, I think we are," I replied, my heart swelling with a mixture of hope and love. As I looked at Lisa, I realized that life would always throw obstacles our way. Betrayal had been a harsh teacher, but if we committed to learning from it, we could emerge stronger together. We were learning to forgive, not just each other, but ourselves as well. In the end, this experience taught me a valuable lesson about love, trust, and resilience. While the pain of betrayal would always linger in the background, it became a part of our story, a chapter that had the power to define us or strengthen us. We chose the latter. As I walked with Lisa, hand in hand, I understood that while the past was painful, it had paved the way for a brighter future. We were writing a new narrative together, one that would be characterized by growth, understanding, and unyielding support. And in that moment, I knew we were ready to face whatever life threw our way together. This was our story, and it was just beginning.